Hi everyone, my name is Dévi and welcome to Book Connoisseur.
Wow!
So I have my April wrap up for you today, and I'm not gonna lie, April was a tough reading month for me. I don't really know why, I just wasn't clicking with any of the books I read. I DNF'd 2 books, which is a lot for me. I usually push through books, but I'm trying to learn to put them down when they're not working. So I did finish 4 books, which is fine. I mean, that's great. That's like 1 book a week, but I usually read a little bit more than that per month. At least this year I have been. So anyway, let's talk about those 4 books. The first book I read was Enter Ghost by Isabel Hamad. Now, this book I have talked about before on this channel. I will link that video up above here. Enter Ghost was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction 2024. It's a book about a Palestinian Dutch woman who lives in London and is visiting her sister in Palestine, and she gets coerced into helping with rehearsals for the play Hamlet, which her sister's friend is directing on the West Bank. This book is long. It's not for everyone. I've heard some people say that it's been a slog, and I can totally see why that is. There's a lot of characters because you get the whole cast of Hamlet on top of some family and friends of the main character. There's a lot of people to keep track of, and there's a lot happening. There's a lot of moving from city to city, and there's a lot of conflict that gets covered in this book. Just everyday life conflict for people living in an occupied territory. I think this book is really powerful because it humanizes Palestinians for the reader. And I think that is a great example of why fiction can be so powerful. We follow a lot of the mundanity of everyday life in Palestine. I think that the author exemplified how difficult that can be for most, if not all, of the people living there, just going to the grocery store or trying to get to work through checkpoints, security checkpoints and whatnot. So I think it's really relevant for reading today, and I would highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was Juno Loves Legs by Carl Geary. So this book is about 2 friends, Juno and Legs, and their life as children being kind of outcasts, growing up with parents with mental illnesses and alcoholism, and growing up very poor in Dublin. The story covers the 2 friends growing apart and then growing back together. And I think that this is an incredible book about the power and the love in friendship. And I just adored it. Both Legs and Juno were very complex characters, and a lot happened within the book that helped propel it forward. And if you're a fan of Douglas Stewart, who wrote Shuggie Bain and Young Mungo, I think you would really love this book. I believe Douglas Stewart is quoted on the front. This book takes place in the 80s and 90s. Things going on at that period in time that are alluded to and never really specifically mentioned, which I think was a really clever way for this author to place this story within a larger historical context. The one thing that tripped me up a little bit was the passing of time in this book. I'm still not entirely sure how much time actually passed. I mean, it's clearly been several years, but the sense of time wasn't very clear to me, other than when it specifically told me. So yeah, that's my only criticism of this book. Other than that, I thought it was fantastic, and it really helped me get me out of a pretty deep funk of a reading slump. The next book I read was Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. Now, this is Megan Nolan's debut novel, and I also want to point out how similar are the covers between Juno Loves Legs and Acts of Desperation. I mean, the gray picture, yellow font. Okay, anyway, I thought that was funny when I was holding them together. Acts of Desperation tells the story of a young adult woman living in Dublin, also Irish book. She is in this relationship with a guy and it's just toxic. It really captured the toxicity that within her head, and I just think it was brilliant. But as I was watching Aoife's review, I will link it down below, of this book, and she mentioned that it was just totally draining, and she's completely right. This book is completely draining, and I'm impressed I finished it. Honestly, I had to put it down a few times because it was just a lot, but it is really well written. It's just emotional and a lot. I will say that the plot of this book took a turn that I wasn't expecting it to take, and I was very surprised by the ending. It was really like so self-involved with this one character that it just was this deep hole you're just burying yourself in as you're reading. Yeah, and it was beautifully written, and the character development was incredible. It wasn't my favorite book in the world, but I thought it was really beautifully done. I do think I like Ordinary Human Failings better, which is Megan Nolan's second novel that was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction 2024. And I highly recommend that one. If you've already read Ordinary Human Failings, don't expect this to be very similar to it. It's similar in its character development, but the plot is so different. There isn't much of a subplot in Acts of Desperation the way there is in Ordinary Human Failings. It's very character driven. The last book I read in April was How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair. This book is shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction 2024. It is a memoir of Sophia Sinclair as she grew up in a Rastafarian home in Jamaica under the cage set up for her by her father. Sophia Sinclair is a poet, and you can absolutely tell. I mean, poets write such beautiful books. The prose is unreal. I think that the problem you can have in memoirs is they can often have this focus of the person being a victim in a way, especially if it's a non-celebrity memoir. There's a reason why they chose to tell their story. And what I find so inspiring about her story is that she certainly was a victim within this very strict upbringing, which I didn't realize Rastafarian was so strict, but it can be. And how she managed to escape from that. And I think that is so powerful in itself. She's just such a strong woman, and I think it's a beautiful story. And the one thing I really, really appreciated was the trajectory of her relationship with her father. It's so complex, and I just feel like she revealed so much that it's incredible to me where their relationship ends up in the end. After reading How to Say Babylon, now I'm not sure who's gonna win the Women's Prize for Nonfiction between How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair and A Flat Place by Noreen Masood. Yeah, those are all the books that I read in April. I didn't talk about the books I DNFed. So if you watched my previous video where I choose from my McNally Editions collection which book to read based on the first sentences, you will know that I was supposed to read The Devil's Treasure by Mary Gateskill for this month. And about 50 pages in, I just decided this was not a book for me. Basically, Mary Gateskill takes excerpts from 3 of her previously written novels and uses them to sort of weave in her own memoir and what inspired these sections of her books. And I have never read a Mary Gateskill book. I'm not totally sure I will, although this is definitely a DNF for now, not a DNF forever. I just think that while you can read this without reading Mary Gateskill, I think your reading of it will be much more informed if you have read Mary Gateskill prior to The Devil's Treasure. So I decided to put that down, and I will be doing another McNally's edition draw later this month. The other book I decided to DNF was Restless Dolly Maunder by Kate Grenville. This book is shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I just decided that I was in too much of a slump to be reading a book that wasn't completely engaging me. And it wasn't bad. I read about 100 pages of it, and I just thought that I needed a break from the Women's Prize for Fiction, or I needed a book that was really gonna grab my attention, and this just wasn't it. If this wins the overall prize, which I don't think it will, but it certainly could, I will return to it. But if not, I might just save it for a rainy day. That might never happen. But anyway, that is my wrap up for April. I am excited about the books I have going right now and talk to you about them at the end of the month. So you probably have already watched my May TBR, but I am planning to annotate a book, and I think I'm going to make a video about it as I'm doing it, but we'll see if that happens or if I have the time. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? Have you DNF'd a book recently? Let me know what it is. I'm embracing the DNF. Please like and subscribe. I'm so grateful that you're here watching me, and I would be grateful if you stick around. So I'll be back soon with another video. Bye!